We are live, apparently.
Hello.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
I can't see it on the YouTube page, on the YouTube. So.
There might be a little bit of a delay, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go. It's coming up now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Fancy
Hello.
seeing you all here.
Hello,
Hello.
everyone.
Hello.
This is a bit different.
Welcome to our homes. I'm broadcasting live from my children's playroom. They are not happy about it.
Hello, I'm broadcasting live from my kitchen and sharing the connection. So if I do go wobbly, apologies for that.
Where are you broadcasting from, Emma?
My bedroom. Hopefully the internet should hold out unless my flatmates start streaming games or something.
What about you, Imogen?
I'm also in my bedroom because that is where my desk is. Although my boyfriend is also streaming Disney Plus, so we'll see what happens.
Disney
Wow.
Plus. I could do a whole panel on that. God. But we're
How
not
to get into
here.
Disney Plus.
Yeah, how to watch all of Mandalorian. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Star Wars. We're to talk about video game journalism and how to get into it. So I think we should probably introduce ourselves. I am Wesley and I'm the deputy editor of Eurogamer. I've been at the site for nearly 10 years. And I work across all parts of the site: news, features, reviews, planning, interviews, the whole lot, events. Tom, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Tom Phillips. I'm the news editor for Eurogamer. And as you might expect from that job title, I am the person who looks after news, which means I've had the great honor and joy of working with everybody here on this panel.
Mm.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm the reporter for Eurogamer. I was an intern. Is it coming up to like 2 years now? I think.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, a time ago. Yeah, no. So do day-to-day news and some reports and features, things like that.
Hi, I'm Imogen. I am the newest newswriter for Rock Paper Shotgun, and I was the intern for 2019 at Eurogamer. And my day-to-day is also just doing news and pretty much similar stuff that I did on the internship.
Cool. So I think it's probably clear that we all have a sort of news background. I was the news editor at one point, and I still do news for Eurogamer. And the internship that we run is got a news leaning. Obviously, lots of different types of articles you can do while you're on it, but news is obviously the focus, and we call it the reporter internship because that's what we're looking for. Before we get started, I just want to say that we are postponing the Eurogamer internship for 2020 while all of this coronavirus stuff is going on. We're not sure when it's going to come back because we only want to do it when it's right to do it. But we do want to do it. We're very much up for doing it this year if we can, but we won't do it until it's right.
It's something, sorry, I just want to say it's something that we want, like it's always been best to do in the office. So that's obviously not something that we can cater for at the moment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But we're all really passionate about the internship. I've loved working with our interns over the last 3 years. I'm really proud of how it's turned out and the people that have come through it, who I think have all gone on to do fantastic stuff. So it will be back. Watch this space from 2 meters apart, hopefully. So I promised I wouldn't do any dad jokes, but I can't help it.
5 minutes in.
Okay. So I think the first thing to do is to talk about how we got into games journalism. There's a variety of routes there, I think, to discuss. Imogen, why don't you start by telling us how you got in?
Yeah, sure. So I did a quite traditional journalism degree at university, and I actually failed a year of it because I wasn't really enjoying it very much. I think I just kind of didn't bother. But then in that year that I failed, I kind of realized what I wanted to do and that there was more direction in that I could write about games and that could be a job. And kind of from there ended up kind of trying to write about games in my own time, like blogging and stuff. And I ended up getting a kind of freelance job with a small YouTube channel at the time called Gamementary. And so I did 2-minute reviews for them. And that's where a lot of my kind of experience started. That was 2 years ago, I think. And then, yeah, sort of got to the end of writing my degree, which I also did about games because why not at that point? So yeah, my dissertation was about game journalism. And then towards the end of that, it was the time to apply for the Eurogamer internship. And I very nearly didn't do it because I was kind of really disheartened with journalism at that point. And I did apply for it and I got it, which was really, really cool. And it kind of restored my faith in journalism a little bit, which was great. But yeah, I think one of the things that helped me most was writing about games in my free time and doing those reviews and stuff, kind of getting whatever experience you can. And I think I didn't do that stuff for free. I did it for very cheap, but it's, I think, important to establish that you can write about those things before you apply for something like the internship, even though the internship is massively to help you with that as well. But yeah, I also went to this panel at EGX Res, to my first Res last year, and I'm gutted that it isn't a proper panel this year. Well, it is a proper panel, but just a stream. Yeah.
So after the internship, you got a job on RPS.
I did.
Talk about how you found that experience, how you managed to secure your place in the industry, really.
Yeah, so sort of towards the end of the internship, I was lucky enough for these guys to offer me an extra 2 months, which was amazing. And then during those 2 months, I saw the RPS news writer position go up on the recruitment website. And immediately Tom and Wes were both you should apply for this. And they're very good mentors and they're very supportive. And so I did apply for it and kind of went through the usual means. I sent an email, did a cover letter, did a CV, and then had my interview, and then I got it, and which was really cool. But my kind of experience with this stuff has been very straight, I think, compared to all of it. I haven't kind of gone in any back routes to get into games journalism. It's very much been I applied for jobs and I got them because I worked really hard to establish myself as a voice. So
Tom, your route into games journalism was not like that. How did you what was your journey?
Yeah, it was different in that I didn't take a journalism degree at university, which I think is important to state because it's not necessary for the internship. I did a history degree at university, so writing, sourcing, that sort of thing, but nothing specific to journalism itself. And I joined through a fan website that I'd been working on for years and years and years, and then just happened to see a job at Eurogamer, which is 10 years ago, a very long time, and worked my way up through Eurogamer to news editor now, but taking on lots of different roles through the way. And when I started, actually, there wasn't a really junior news writer specific role in the company, which is why I'm so passionate about the internship now, because it's sort of the equivalent to that. So yeah, my experience sort of started off at that fan site, got experience in the industry, got experience talking to people in the industry, just learning and working from other people around. And then when it came to applying for Eurogamer, I had a portfolio of stuff to show.
Cool. Emma, what was your journey?
Yeah, same as Tom. I didn't actually do a journalism degree, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I think maybe final year. I just finally kind of figured out that I wanted to write about games in some capacity. So I took liberal arts and sciences at the University of Birmingham, and I took a game studies module as part of that, and I realized I was like, oh wait, this is really good fun. And in final year, I decided to kind of tailor my degree as much as I could towards writing about games. And also, importantly, I became an editor for the university paper for the gaming section. And that meant I got loads of experience writing articles and also editing other people's work. And I got to go to events such as EGX Res, where I went along to the panel. So this panel, but in the physical form. And yeah, I came and asked an annoying question immediately. And it caught everyone's attention. And I used that to then write it all up into a feature and kind of added everyone at Eurogamer on Twitter when I put that up. And yeah, from there, I then applied for the internship and got it.
Yeah, I remember you asking that question.
Yeah, literally just ran up and grabbed the mic.
It's a good skill to have, being a reporter, asking difficult questions.
It's true, and I think it just shows initiative. And like, I'm not saying that everyone should do that because obviously it won't work this year.
You can't all ask difficult questions, or maybe you can.
Please.
We'll find out.
No, yeah, making a rod for my own back.
They're going to be asking them of you now, Emma.
Oh no. Tables have turned. But you know, similar ideas. I know other people have set up like websites where they've done practice work and they've helped other people who are getting into the industry. Start Menu is the name of one, and it's not paid, but it's just where people can come together and showcase their work and create a portfolio.
Cool. Very briefly on how I managed it. I did some volunteer video game journalism for a couple of websites before I got a job at a website called Videogamer.com, which is still running. Worked there for a few years before applying for the news editor job at Eurogamer, and haven't looked back. So my background is in journalism. I did a journalism degree. I've worked at newspapers and trade magazines and all the rest of it, and decided video game journalism was what I wanted to do. But I started by just building a sort of portfolio of writing in my spare time, usually when no one was looking at when I was working at a newspaper, actually. And from there, had a body of work to show that when I actually went to apply for a job. And I think that's the sort of recurring theme with all of us, is that we all did video game journalism and writing almost on the side or as part of a course before we got our foot in the doors, right? And I still, even though I did that a long time ago, you guys did that more recently, I think that is still really good advice. Tom, would you agree with that? Would you say that's
yeah,
a key thing to do?
Yeah, I think, like, so video games writing, we're all blessed to be writing about something that we really are passionate and interested and entertained in. And there's a lot of people out there who want to do that. And the best way to really show exactly how informed and passionate you are is to put together a body of work. As Wes said, I think that's a common theme from what all of us have said, all of our various routes into video game journalism now and a little further back in the past than now. Yeah, just to collate that, put it somewhere. You know, I work for a fan site, so I had that to show, but and that was just a hobby, really. But like now, you just put it on a blog or make a website or something. WordPress is absolutely fine, just somewhere that shows this work, and that you've sort of got a handle on what sites want. I don't know if you want to start talking about that, but like to start showing the angles and the holes in coverage that maybe you could slot into.
Imogen, you've most recently broken into video game journalism. If you could talk to yourself back when you were sort of thinking about getting into it and whether or not you wanted to do it, what advice would you give yourself with the benefit of a year and a half?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like personally, I think I struggled with the idea of pitching to places. Like I was always a bit too scared to do it because of like the rejection and that kind of thing. And I think now, having been in a staff role, and I know kind of what it is like with like when people do pitch you and stuff, it's really not as scary as it needs to. It was for me. Like just pitching somewhere, and if you get a no, then it's a no. Like whatever, you can just send that same thing somewhere else and see if you can get it, or like rework your ideas and stuff. So I think, yeah, the advice I'd say to me is just do it. Like just write more. Just try and get your ideas out there, because I think that would have helped me a lot to start off with. Just while I was at uni, because especially in university, me, rather than having a like shitty part-time job, pitching and getting freelance articles out would have been like a lot more, which is a lot better for my own experience. So yeah.
And Emma, similar question for you, I guess. What advice would you give someone who is maybe leaving university this year, or is going to leave university, or is just thinking about trying to get into games journalism? What sort of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I guess as we've said already, just building up that portfolio and also kind of breaking into the Twitter bubble is quite important. Definitely making sure that people know about your work and that you're following the right people. So if you follow website editors and things like that, you can also get a sense of what they commission, and hopefully you can catch their eye. That's not to say that you should like bother them too much, but just kind of respectfully engage in the conversations going on around games, and also just keeping an eye on what's going on and what's current. There's often kind of discussions that are happening around Twitter, and other developers will bring it up, and that can be a really good starting point for coming up with feature ideas and pitches.
I think that leads us nicely onto the topic of what we think makes a good story, the kind of things that we're after from freelancers who are pitching us things, and from prospective interns, and just anyone who's applying for a sort of reporter, newsy role or staff writer role at either Eurogamer or any website really, or magazine. Tom, as Eurogamer's news editor, what do you think makes an interesting story that you would click on and read?
When I see an interesting headline about a game that I don't know about, a game that I don't follow, a game that I don't really have any background knowledge in, but when I read a headline and it describes to me a story that's going on in that game, maybe some people playing it are doing something, maybe the developer's done something, maybe the people finding out about a hidden secret in the game, or people are doing something that's never been done in the game before in a cool way. And it's about a game that I would otherwise just keep scrolling past on Twitter. That to me is a really good story, or a really good headline, because it sells something that is universally interesting and tells me that even if I'm not interested in this game, this is a really interesting story and it's going to be told in an interesting way, and I'm probably going to click through. Now, obviously, I'm going to click on stuff about Animal Crossing anyway, and if you've got a really cool idea about Animal Crossing, don't not pitch that, but to stand out, like look for the games that websites are not covering as much, that's still current and interesting, but like if you found an interesting angle, something that can stand out amongst everything else, you're putting yourself like so far out in front already. Pitching Animal Crossing is good while we're all in isolation. You're going to need a really good pitch for that, because everybody is doing that right now. So just try and make your pitch as individual and as unique and as informative as possible to as wide an audience as possible, because that's at the end of the day what you want. You want your story to be out there and read by as many people as possible. And as websites or magazines or YouTube channels or whatever medium you're trying to pitch to, they want content stories that can reach as many people as possible as well.
Imogen, how would you describe what Paper Shotgun is after when it comes for cool stories or articles from young freelancers?
Similar stuff to Eurogamer, to be fair. We have got like a pitching like article of like kind of what stuff RPS is looking for, and it is kind of just reported stories on things that communities are doing, or like interview-led stuff on what maybe like a small developer is doing. You know, RPS does a lot of indie coverage as well. So if you can contextualize something really cool going on in an indie game, then like great, absolutely try and pitch something like that, because I think RPS especially are always looking for more kind of reported features like interviews and like primary research kind of stuff, you know.
Emma, one of the things I think you're fantastic about is unearthing sort of unique stories, like community-driven stuff, or reporting on really interesting angles that no one else picks up on. What advice would you give to someone who sort of gets that that's the kind of thing we're after, but isn't really sure how to go about finding this stuff? How do you personally do it?
Yeah, sure. So I normally go to Reddit to start, because that's just kind of a really good hub for gaming communities. And if you're looking into a specific game, you can go straight to it and find conversations around that. But often those groups will kind of splinter off into Discord and things like that. So if you want to get involved in modding, you can often find Discord groups which are centered around modding a particular game. And that way you can get some really cool stories. And yeah, again, keeping an eye on Twitter, sometimes following certain accounts that will specialize in particular games. Like there are a lot of people who will do Fortnite news, and mods often have Twitter pages which are like dedicated to updating everyone on progress. So definitely just keeping an eye on all of that. And they normally just seem to kind of pop out at me. It's hard to describe, really, kind of get a knack for it. So it's a lot of practice and trying to find out what angles work.
Yeah, I think that's all great advice. I think from my perspective, I would say trying to sort of differentiate yourself early in your sort of attempt to be a video games journalist is really important. And by that I mean like identifying niches. There's 1,000,001 people who want to review the next Nintendo Switch exclusive, right? But if you can, including Tom Phillips, if you can identify yourself and as someone who is capable of handling some of the more like niche video game genres that staff might struggle to deal with or even understand, then you're giving yourself a real leg up in those in terms of like standing out. Like if you can look at genres that are sort of underreported on the major sites, and you can understand their communities, their development, and the things that are going on around them, you'll find stories that we just won't pick up on. And there's a huge number of resources that Emma's talked about there, where you can find out what's going on, essentially. Cool. I think it will probably be a good idea to have a look at some questions, which we've had a fair few of, which is great. We've had a question from Molly Taylor. If you guys couldn't do games journalism, what other sector of journalism would you do? For example, sports, war correspondent. Two ends of the scale there. Tom, if you weren't doing video game journalism, would you be doing journalism? If so, what type?
That's a really good question. I think I would. I don't quite know what I would be doing if I wasn't. I don't know. My first instinct is just somewhere still in entertainment journalism, like TV or something like that. I as news editor, I don't do a lot of like reviews and things. I do some, but that's something that I thought about doing for other mediums as well. In terms of where the stories are, I don't know. You don't often find that much drama being reported.
Getting the impression that this is your job and you're doing the right job for you. So
yeah, I don't think war correspondent. No, I think games journalism has a specific set of skills which don't necessarily apply, and the people who are doing that are best suited to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't peg you as a sports reporter either. Moving on, Emma, if you weren't doing this,
sport, right?
God, Emma, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
I have no idea. Like literally, I came out of university and I was like, I gotta go for the internship, and then that was it. So I didn't really have any other
All your
plans.
eggs in one basket. Huh? Nice.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'll just try this, and then I'll see what happens. And I think my parents really hoping for me to become a politician.
Yeah,
they're still hoping.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you'd be more or less hated as a politician.
Yeah, about the same level. Yeah. Now I can just write about politics and games, so you know I'm covered.
It's basically the same thing. Jin?
I used to want to be a film journalist. When I actually chose to do my journalism degree, that was kind of, I used to want to work for Empire magazine, and I tried to get work experience there a couple of times, but to no avail. So yeah, probably films. Although I worked in a radio station briefly during my degree, and I really enjoyed doing radio. So maybe I'd just be on the radio. That would be fun.
Cool.
What about you, Wes?
I
You've
don't
done
know.
other
I
bits and
don't need
pieces of
to
journalism.
answer this.
Why?
I actually did do some sports journalism once. I worked for the local newspaper in Barnsley once, and I reported on a boxing match. How about that? But yeah, I don't know what I'd be doing.
Is that just a fight outside a pub?
Actually, I was reporting on my own fight. So anyway, Jamie D asks, what would you guys say is important when pitching an article to a publication? We've talked about this a little bit, but more specifically in the actual pitch itself, very briefly, what I'm looking for is a very clear, strong angle, something that makes it very obvious that you understand what this piece is. Like vague pitches aren't great. If you've thought about what the headline might be, that's fantastic as well. Put pitch in the subject line of your email as well, so it's very easy for us to see what it is, because we get inundated with these emails. So if we can very quickly and easily identify what it is and the angle, that's great. I'd also very quickly recommend that you put examples of your writing in your pitches. This very difficult for us to know whether we can trust a new freelancer who's sort of trying to make their way in the industry if we can't see examples of their writing. So yeah, really clear, strong angle that's explained in a concise way, and examples of your writing. Imogen, is that sort of similar to what RPS sort of looking for? How would you?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Like get emails occasionally that are people like, I've already written this thing and here it is, and don't do that. Don't write articles on spec, because you might not get commissioned, and then you've done loads of work for the sake of nothing. So always kind of like have a good idea of what you want to write about, but don't just go ahead and stick 1,000 words like attached to an email, because it probably won't actually get you anywhere. But yeah, and also try and find the right email to pitch to as well. Like we get a lot of pitches just in our general like contact at RPS email address, and that often gets overlooked because we get so many like PR emails and all sorts in there. So just, yeah, if you don't know, just ask for the right person to email. Like for RPS, it would be the deputy editor Alice Bell, or the editor-in-chief Graham. So yeah.
Cool. Moving on. Willem Hillhorst asks, if I may ask, how much does the journalism degree still help you out now? How much does that journalism degree still help you out nowadays? So Imogen, you've got a journalism degree. Would you say it helps you?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of for just generally writing news, I've learned kind of the way to structure it all properly, and I think that was quite important. And like it helps with searching for news things as well, like kind of teaches you where to find your stories and that kind of thing, and like interview techniques and all that kind of stuff. So I do still use it loosely because RPS is a lot more conversational than anywhere else that I've kind of worked for. But yeah, it absolutely is still useful. Not essential, but useful.
Yeah, I did mine quite a while ago, so I don't really know if I can't do shorthand as fast as I used to, that's for sure. But I think it does teach you give you a good grounding in news in particular, the structure of feature writing, research, interview techniques, which are important. So I would say I still use it. It's obviously not essential, and I think we've sort of demonstrated that it's not essential with getting on the internship specifically. So, so yeah, you don't have to be doing a journalism degree to get into this industry. Absolutely not. Moving on, Richard Flint asks, are there any tips you can give to someone aspiring to join the Eurogamer internship who's already in the gaming journalism industry? I think that's an interesting one, because I think a lot of what we're talking about has been, you know, you're new to the industry, you're maybe doing a course at university, and you're sort of eyeing it up as your sort of foot in the door. This is your way to get into it. Tom, how would you answer that one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because so looking back over the last 3 years, or the 3 years that we've done the internship, all three candidates have been university graduates. I don't think like we wouldn't like necessarily penalize someone because they aren't graduating university, or they're just at a different like period in their lives. But it is sort of supposed to be a way to help people get into the games industry in the UK, because there really aren't very many ways to get into the games industry in the UK. And I know candidates in the past have applied and they have been overqualified. You know, they've already been published a dozen times on other websites. And I think like we'd want to talk to these people as we have in the past, and help and provide advice, like see where we could get their career further. The internship is supposed to be sort of a foot in the door of the industry, in a staff role that perhaps you might not be able to get elsewhere. So there may still be things that apply to you. I think like I wouldn't want to say anything in a kind of a blanket way, because I think every candidate is different. Every candidate is in a slightly different place, in a different set of circumstances. And one of the reasons we're not running the internship this year is we can't run it in the office. And I think like a really good part of it is not just giving people like a peek into games journalism as a staff writer, but also working in an office environment, giving people a team to work around, a team to bounce ideas off of, and workshop ideas with in a group. And I could definitely see the benefits of that of someone who's just been working, you know, on their own in the industry. So yeah, I think we take it on a case-by-case basis is sort of the non-answer I'm going to give.
Wow. Okay, moving on. I would echo that, by the way. Not the non-answer bit, the rest of it.
I thought it was a good answer.
People Make Games asks,
oh no.
I assume that's Chris Pratt, who used to work for Eurogamer, and is lovely. How is COVID-19 affecting your job right now, and how might it affect getting into games journalism? I think that's a good question. Emma, how would you say coronavirus is affecting your job?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's really affecting it beyond kind of the same that everyone else is for in working from home challenges. It's just kind of not being able to go outside that much, and being confined in a small space is fun. But to be honest, most of it's been pretty similar. We have to have kind of calls in the morning just so that we can hear each other's voices, you know, and just kind of keep in touch. But I would say that most of my job's been the same. I do my research online, I write online. In fact, there's been more interest in video games right now than there has been in a long time. So yeah, we've been doing all right, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the games journalism or just journalism generally is probably better able to weather this than some other professions, because it's almost entirely online based. I mean, our work is basically online, so we've been able to transition over to working from home.
I think the only exception to that I would add is maybe people who are struggling, who are freelancers, because if certain companies are cutting back budgets, which doesn't apply to us, then I think that has an effect. But yeah, we're very lucky.
Yeah.
Staff.
So yeah, just to stress, our freelance budget has not been affected by coronavirus. We are still open for business. We're still reporting on the industry as best we can from home, obviously, and we're accepting pitches. So yeah, as far as how it might affect getting into games journalism, I imagine that there'll be some sort of difficulties as that crop up as a result of lack of face-to-face meetings. You know, interviews will have to be online. Any work done would have to be online. And you can see it's affecting us because we've postponed the internship, right? So maybe things are getting pushed back. Maybe some companies will be like, it's not the right time to hire people. But as a profession, I think it's in a decent place, and we're still able to work. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on because we've got a lot of questions. We sort of talked about pitching. The sports leader asks, how would you recommend people working full-time in unrelated fields from non-journalistic backgrounds build expertise and get noticed? We have talked a little bit about that, but I think it's probably worth talking about again, because I see this sort of question a lot as people are sort of not in our bubble, wondering how they can get in it. Imogen, what advice would you give to that person? Not they've got a full-time job, got nothing to do with video game journalism or video game industry necessarily, doesn't have a journalistic background. How can they get noticed? How can they build expertise?
Just writing like on a blog or whatever in your spare time, and just showing that you have a passion for doing like games writing, I think is the biggest thing that you can do. You know, that's what I used to do when I had like my part-time job, and when I was at uni, I would just in my spare time, I would try and write about stuff or just do reviews, even if it was reviews of stuff that had been out for 10 years, like you're still showing that you're writing about something and you're passionate about it. So I think that's probably one of the best ways, really.
Emma, I think it'd be interesting to ask you to put that question to you as well, as someone who you weren't doing a games journalism course necessarily. How would you build expertise now? How would you get noticed now?
Yeah, no, I guess like again, starting out with some blogs, I guess. Like I'm always a little bit reluctant to kind of point people towards like free writing for free, but it might be a good idea if you don't really have much of a portfolio to do it for a little bit. You got to kind of recognize the point at which you need to stop doing that and start putting yourself forward for like paid pitches. So for instance, if you've got a journalism degree, I'd say you probably wouldn't want to do the kind of freelance for no money thing for too long, because you've got quite a lot of background there, but you'd still want to do enough that you've got a portfolio. So yeah, looking for blogs and opportunities like that where you can do a little bit of writing, get that background.
I think blogs are good because you're writing for yourself. You're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, rather than writing for someone else for free, it means that you feel obliged, like you owe someone stuff, even though you're not getting paid for it. Like
yeah, and definitely be careful with those kind of agreements you can make, where it's like, oh yeah, we want you to write this many articles per week, and we're going to give you like 50p for it. Like just make sure that you're not going to be stressing yourself out for something that's probably not worth it in long term.
For sure.
Will Sawyer asks, how much do you guys consider general journalism experience over game specific experience when deciding an intern? Tom, what do you reckon?
I think so much of it comes down to the examples. So when people apply for the internship, they provide samples of writing, or you know, a CV with cover letter and links to a blog portfolio. And someone's written on a CV that they come from a journalism background, and that's represented in their work, and that's a good thing. But I think, as you said before, it's it's helped, but it doesn't rule anybody in or anybody out at all. I think it all comes down to the writing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a mix for me. I do love a bit of general journalism experience over game-specific experience. I think there's a lot of skills that people can learn outside the games bubble that will help them stand out. But it's always a case-by-case basis for us, I think. Daniel Hollis asks, I only started freelancing back in September and have managed to get bylines at Eurogamer, Gamasutra and more. I work 50 hours a week alongside this. What advice would you give making the transition? If you're successfully freelancing now, I'm not sure the internship is right for you. I would keep an eye out for staff jobs. I think that's probably the more applicable route. And this is a good point to point out that that guides writing is a really good avenue to get into video games journalism. That wasn't really around 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Guides writing has exploded in video games journalism in the last few years. Most websites have a guides team. Most websites are freelancing guides content out. And as a sort of entry-level job, there's probably more guides work going than there are other jobs at this moment. So even though guides writing might not be the sort of thing that you would immediately think of it as something you want to do, I think it's a great sort of avenue to get into games journalism. And the work can be fantastic, incredibly rewarding. And you know, if you're at the right team, you'll be doing other stuff as well. So I would keep an eye out for staff jobs. I'd also be mindful, Daniel, of your sort of workload. If you're working 50-hour weeks and you're freelancing, just keep an eye on that, because that sounds like quite a lot to me. Daniel Green, I knew this was coming. Daniel Green asks, what exactly was Emma's difficult question? And how would she answer said question now? Go on, Emma.
Okay. You got me. The question was basically, I think a few weeks before, Eurogamer had been used as an example in a survey of how many women I think were writing articles for websites at any one time. And yeah, Eurogamer wasn't doing very well back then. So I asked what Eurogamer was doing to increase its kind of diversity and make sure there were more female voices on the site. And what also I think a bit more about the industry generally and the kind of how it was for women getting into games journalism. Yes, that was my question. The answer now, I think we're doing a lot better. I'd like to hope so. We've got more people, we've got more women on staff, and also our freelance pool has been a kind of broadened to include more women, I would say. And it feels like we've got a better range of voices on the site. So it's kind of improving. There's still work to be done, I think, but a lot better. And yeah, in terms of what it's like to be a woman in games journalism, I'd say that like most people in the industry are really lovely, and there's a really nice support network for women. Like they kind of look out for each other and are there to support each other. And a lot of the kind of bad stuff that we experience, like we're able to like talk to each other. For instance, like I am occasionally, like I do get people being like nastier online about that kind of thing, but thankfully it's gotten more rare. So yeah, no, that's basically what I'd say to that question.
Cool. I remember having to answer that as well. We're running out of time. Richard Flint asks, is it ever too late to get into the industry? I freelance alongside my full-time job for 3 years now and haven't quite made it yet. Any advice? I think that's I don't think it's ever too late to get into the industry for a start. I think if you're sort of freelancing alongside your full-time job, then there's obvious decision to be made there, whether you want to commit to try and make freelancing full-time work for you. But then I think it's obviously a case of looking out for staff jobs. Everyone's situation is different, but I would say it's never too late to get into the industry. I'm being asked to wrap up, and there's still loads of questions that we didn't get to, unfortunately. But I will say that I'm always available to answer questions whenever you want. My email is in my Twitter bio, and my Twitter handle is @WYP100. And if anyone's got any sort of follow-ups, I'm always happy to help. We'll go round on that point as well, actually. Emma, if do you want to point people towards your contact?
My handle is @GoneEFK. My messages are open as well, so you can just send me a question if you want that answered.
Tom?
My handle is @Tom Phillips EG, and my email address is tom@eurogamer.net.
Imogen?
My Twitter handle is @ImiBeck, and my email is imogen.beckhelling@rockpapershotgun.com.
Cool. I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to squeeze one last question in. Will Sawyer asks, Tom, when is the next Nintendo Direct?
It's been over 1 day since the last one. The longest we've ever had to wait before. I'd love to hear from them again before E3. I think we will.
The most valuable part of this whole panel right there. Okay. All right, guys, thank you so much for turning up. I really appreciate your time. Like I say, the internship will be back. When, I'm not sure, but it will be back. Good luck to all of you in your video game journalism careers. Any questions, just get in touch. Cheers.